Hello, I'm Peter Bell, and I'm here with Mr. Patrick McGrath from Blue Moon Zinc. Hello, Patrick.
Hi, Peter. Thanks for having me.
Nice to talk to you for the first time here. Blue Moon Zinc, new to me. Um, Lots of surprises, even from the little bit of analysis I've done already. And your time may have come too with what seems like rising prices around the metals complex.
Yeah, I mean, we're lucky in that really all metal prices that encompasses the Blue Moon deposit have done very well. We've got on the base metal side, we've got zinc and copper, which are both done very well as of late. And then on a gross value, the other side of it is the precious metals, and that's obviously gold and silver. And we have a VMS deposit, polymetallic, which means it's a combination of those four metals.
And it looks like it's undercover, judging by this picture on the front slide of the deck.
Yeah, it would be an underground operation. So, I mean, that's helpful in several ways, particularly on the permitting side. An underground operation is, a smaller footprint on surface, which means it's likely easier to permit.
Wonderful. I've got the pitch deck up here. We can scroll through this and come back to it. Maybe I'll take us away for a second first, though, to have a look at a few things on the company website here.
Sure.
List of the people involved, and my first time meeting you, but quite a career you've had. Good job. Various things along the way. The iron ore niche is not really, I don't know a lot of people who do much with iron ore, probably to my own detriment. I remember seeing a graph once that showed the range in commodity prices for a bunch of the metals, and iron ore had the biggest range from peak to trough, kind of across market cycles. I was really surprised to see that. Those are big markets.
Yeah, I mean, it's big players on the iron ore side, and like you said, there's big troughs on the upside and on the downside. I mean, there's long lead items, but it was an interesting experience for me. That was when I was younger, at the beginning of my career. I had two great mentors, and Mike Bealey and Richard Barkley. They were the co-founders of Bema Gold, and then they later went on to create Eldorado Gold. So I was lucky enough to join them on Adriana Resources and the building out of that company and its assets.
Amazing. And Jack McClintock here as a director.
Yeah, I met Jack during my Adriana days, and Jack's a really neat guy. He won Prospector of the Year for founding the Spence mine, which is one of the largest copper projects in production down in Chile. He had some high-level experience at some of the majors, including BHP. He's just a walking Rolodex of projects in the world, really.
Yeah, this experience is so valuable, right?
I mean, and that's why I got involved in this project. Is Jack has always talked about the Blue Moon project. It's that it should have really been developed years and years ago, and it was kind of like a hidden gem that we saw in this company. And so that's why we both accumulated a large position, and we took over the company 3 years ago.
And so I'm on the project page on the website here. And so this is the Blue Moon Zinc project. And this is in California.
That's right. So you can see the two photos there, the drone footage still shot and the terrain there. I mean, these the still photos, the one I took, you can see it's rolling hills.
Yeah.
There's no agriculture in the area. It's kind of poor cattle grazing land. As a result of that, and it's an area that is looking for jobs and new revenue base. So for us, it's a great opportunity. It's a great area. It's Mariposa County. It's a large county by size, but very small population, like less than 20,000 people.
Yeah, amazing to think 3 hours to a port and 4 hours to Reno.
Yeah, I mean, I've met Jack at the San Francisco airport, and within 3 hours, we're right there on site that you can see that picture of. It's major highways all the way through, and it's just like that last 2 or 3 miles on that nicely paved or dirt road right there in front of you.
Patented claims. Anything around that you'd mention?
What, sorry?
Patented claims.
Yeah, so it's a combination of patented and unpatented. So one of the things that I do like about US based assets is very strong land tenure.
Yes.
So as I mentioned, it's a combination of the two. So we own mineral rights, and then we own some ground that's on the BLM land. So it's a combination of the two. This land package has been together for decades. It's probably 50, 60 years. This land package has been in one hand, if you will, because it's very low cost to maintain it. So as a result, this asset has stayed in one ownership group for decades, and it's basically sat there dormant for decades. And that's where we always knew about this asset. And when we saw several projects get through the permitting stage in California, and some big ones, that's when we got involved and got a large share position and took over management.
And with the patented claims that are there any old mine workings? And, what kind of historical drill core do you still have? Is there a shack kind of on site? What's the condition?
Yeah, so it's actually, so just to go back a little ways away. So World War II, it had minor production. It was a little over 50,000 tons produced. It was more during a war effort to get, they needed zinc and they needed it quickly. So they did mine it right from surface. And then that underground workings did collapse. So then they stopped mining. And then really it was in the 80s where it got active again. It was Boliden, which is one of Europe's leading base metal producers, came in, did extensive drilling, and they're the ones that really came out with the initial deposit that we see now. And they also did advanced engineering work. They did basically a pre-feasibility study. They did metallurgy work. They did advanced permitting. They actually permitted an 800-foot shaft. They were going to put a shaft down and just continue drilling the deposit off of depth. And they were getting ready to produce this asset. And then what happened? They had a tailings spill, and they ended up exiting all their North American assets. And there was a former VP of Westman, which was the ownership was going back and forth between Westman and Boliden. He took over all of Boliden's North American assets, and he led the charge from there forward. And that's why I meant it's only been really two owners of this asset over the last 30 years.
That's amazing. Yeah, I wasn't aware of Boliden owning things in North America.
Yeah, so they had a large tailings dam spill in Spain, and they got into financial trouble, and that's where they exited North America.
Yeah, the history of the mining industry is full of setbacks, right? Exploration business is tough, but production's even worse.
But they spent a lot of money. They did excellent work. All the core is on site.
Yeah.
We have 4 containers of core there, as well as this core on racks. So as a result, we have very good data. The metallurgical work that they did at Lakefield, which is now SGS. They still have all the data on file, even though it was done in the 80s. There's really no difference between metallurgy then and now.
Wow.
So what they did is, it's worth tens of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Of the work they did to what value it is to us today.
So, any need to go back and QC any of those old drill core sitting in inventory, or not really?
No, I mean, for the most part, it can be relied upon. We want to update the metallurgical work, but in terms of drilling, I mean, we're going to keep on defining the resource. There's a lot of exploration opportunities there. So as we're doing it, we're upgrading the deposit, putting new holes in, so reconfirming and expanding. So we're happy with the work that they did. Like I said, the drill core is all on site. It's all split. You can go test any of the core, the historical core at any time, which is a great advantage.
Yeah. Good for you. Amazing. Standing on the shoulders of giants or something a little bit. Do you know how much meterage they drilled? Was it over under 10,000 meters?
Yeah, it was close to 100,000, I believe, or just
Really?
a touch under 100,000. So, it's material. It's a material amount, and that's why, you can see on the table there, we have a resource of 8 million tons of 8% zinc equivalent. And you can see the contained metal there. It's very significant. It's almost 750 million pounds of zinc, 71 million pounds of copper. And, the gold and silver are very material as well. You got 300,000 ounces of gold, 10 million ounces of silver.
Yeah. Yeah.
As I mentioned, the gross value of those assets, it's basically almost 50-50 between base metals and precious metals. So it's a great combination for the two.
And net smelter return per ton kind of numbers, ballpark range?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously with the precious metals gone up, it's somewhere in the range of around $300 per ton, 250, 300. It's they can do those back of those envelope calculations, and you can see it'll spit out some nice numbers on versus your operating cost. and the key here too is that this project is right next to infrastructure.
Yeah.
As that photo that you showed earlier, there's a power line running right through the property. There's a hydroelectric facility, a couple miles away. There's paved highways 2 miles away. There's communities half an hour to 40 minutes in each direction that would house your workforce. You don't need to build a town.
And there's existing mines, operating mines in the area too, kind of.
Yeah, I mean, Mariposa County, if you go to the capital there, you'll see all the roads are names of metals or mining. It's part of the original gold rush belt.
Yeah.
On your way out to the mine, you'll see, you can see old mine workings that were from 100 years ago. But there is active mines. It's probably a little bit more on the aggregate side. Aggregate's a huge industry in California.
Yes.
But there is some small scale precious metal activity there as well.
Yep, that's right. Absolutely. See some of those prospectors online making some noise, trying to get some attention. Find people help buy some of their claims or finance some placer gold mining schemes. Lots of opportunity out there.
Yep, and we've met several of the prospectors there. Whenever there's a fire, those guys are out there with the metal detectors.
Oh yeah, you got to go to work. Yeah, I can't imagine this winter it's going to be a staking rush potentially with all the new exposure after these big burns this summer. And
that photo you're seeing right now, that in behind there, that's the core rack that's outside.
Yep.
The core that our geologist there is looking at, that's some of the key core that's contained inside in container ships.
And 2056 to 2081, is that feet? That's got to be feet. We're in the U.S.
That's
here, right?
Feet. Yeah. Everything in the U.S. would be in feet.
That's still a deep intersection too, right? You're talking about 600 meter plus.
Yeah. No, these are drilled on like a 55-degree angle.
Okay.
So it's that's not true depth.
Yep.
True depth is it's probably more like 400 meters or so.
Something like that. Yeah.
Because the deposit itself is vertical, and that's why it lends itself to good underground mining. You can it's a lot easier to mine when it's a near vertical deposit.
I guess it's kind of irrelevant maybe at this point, but borehole EM. Do you know if anybody in any of the prior programs did any downhole geophysics?
I'd have to get our main technical guy. I mean, I'm a finance guy by background. I know they've done several geophysical programs on site, and that would have been mostly by Westman and Bleeden at the time.
Doing the downhole geophysics is kind of a weird thing that isn't really standard, but probably should be. If the money guys understood, the impact it can have on hit rates with some of these systems, probably be a lot more widely done. But at the same time, you guys are not, drilling is not, it's not the catalyst here, right?
But for sure, like on our exploration targets on site, we will be relying on some geophysics and some sort, a combination of it all, with which our geologists, use everything that's available to them to make those targets.
And with all that tonnage and all that metal, is the goal still to, make new discoveries, find higher grade pockets, or what's the plan of attack, broadly speaking? For sure.
It's both of those things. So like what we've, our first hole that we drilled in 2018, I mean, it was the best hole ever drilled in the property. So what we saw is, in these VMS deposits, there often is pockets of very high grade material, and that's what we hit. and we hit over 30% zinc at length. We got almost 2% copper, and we got several hits of 5 gram per ton gold, over 4 or 5 feet. So there's some very high grade sections within this.
Well done.
So our overall goal is to make it bigger and better. So what we want to do is increase the size, from 8 million tons to make it much more substantial. And we're going to do that through extending the current deposit, as well as VMS deposits are known for being in clusters. In this kind of system, there's a very high likelihood that there's more of these vertical deposits all along strike. So that's our goal, is to increase the size of the current deposit, as well as potentially find more of these lenses along strike.
And maybe find some flat lying parts of it too. I don't know how big the land package is and how many different parts of the system the VMS might be hiding around here or there, but maybe there's some parts that haven't been moved around in quite.
And I think we have the strike length that we want in our package, so that there's a lot of opportunities to go down on strike, move on strike from the Blue Moon deposit, and see if we can find some additional lenses there as well.
And feeder zone, is this, you're talking about the vertical orientation, is that because you guys are targeting kind of the feeder?
Well, one of the big areas where we're going to look at is at depth. So this deposit is coming from depth because it's near vertical, and there's been very limited drilling. That's why Boliden, they permitted, and they successfully permitted. They received the permit to construct this 800-foot shaft back in 1990, and that's what they were going to do, is just keep drilling it off at depth into to where the source of this, with the idea that it's probably much larger tonnage as you get to depth. So that's what I would call one of the main exploration targets.
Was their plan to build the shaft and then do exploration work from the shaft? They weren't trying to get into production right away?
Well, it is basically a production decision once you start building it, because that's committing a lot of money. But at the time, they permitted. Like they went through, and got the full permit to build the 800-foot shaft. And that's when they got into financial trouble, when the permit got, the permit got issued. They had full approval to move forward. And that was the main purpose, is to keep drilling it. Instead of drilling it from surface, is to build a shaft and really build it off and define it with the idea that this was going into production.
The permit that they had, is that still live in any way, or was that, I guess they didn't put it into, there's no closure, they didn't have to go through closure?
Yeah, so they never had to go through closure because they never started it, but we do have some legacy benefits from that. Like we have a water discharge permit that was based on that, that's been kept in good standing. We've ensured that that's been paid and kept in good standing. There is some obviously a lot of legacy benefits to having a permit that was issued. This was issued by the local county. We're dealing with the same local county. We went to the county, and that's where we got all the permitting documents. A lot of them are from them, which they had historical legacy information, and some of that information is still relevant today. So, we'll be able to use that on our next round of, when we go to put this in production.
Well, good work to Mariposa County for being organized. I know some counties, it's not quite so easy to get the old documents back.
Yep, and they've been very cooperative and very open and transparent with us, and it's been good. It's been good doing business there for us.
I've got a video up here. It's the drone footage.
Yeah, so this is, it's a great example of what the terrain is like. You can see, there's, it's easy to get around. You got the paved roads. There's the drill pad and the drill. There's no active, farming or any kind of activity in that whole area.
Yeah.
And that's what we like to tell people is this is non-agricultural land. It's not being used for anything right now.
Beautiful. It's
relatively inexpensive to purchase land in the area, and that's because the only use right now is just cattle grazing. It's restricted. You cannot, go build houses on any land in and around this area. It's restricted to agriculture. and various other uses, including mining.
Yeah. Great spot to be set up for a drill program, though, up on top of the ridge line here.
This is in the middle of winter, so this is winter conditions.
Yes, yes.
So you can see you can drill here 365 days a year. It's easy access. You know, we like you mentioned earlier, we're 4 hours away from Reno. You know, we have access to all the services that Reno has to offer, you know, which would be drilling rigs, personnel, assay labs. You know, you can drill here and just drive the material to the lab. You know, you can be there and back in the same day.
Yes. And is this within kind of the old shell or area that had all the old drilling?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. So this is all within the Blue Moon ground.
And how far do you know, looking at this view, do you kind of have any idea where the boundaries of your project area might be? You know, all this is probably in your block.
Yeah, this would all be in our block here. As you go down to the right, that's probably where our property boundary would be further down into that valley, because the deposit is really up on this hill.
Yep.
And that's encompassing the ground that we have.
Rolling hills indeed. Yeah, looking off to the right there, and it's. I wonder. There's probably some overburden, you know, some cover to get through, but doesn't look like a huge amount, especially on some of the ridge lines.
When they you know, they mine from surface.
Yeah.
So it's not far from here, like over to the left-hand side when you're looking at the screen.
Yeah.
It's not far from there where you can actually, I'm sure you can find it on Google Earth, is where the remnants of where they were mining during World War II. You know, it's still there. There's no structures or anything left, but you can see basically the pit of the remnants of it. And
that didn't, you know, going into, you know, what is, some people wouldn't call that brownfields really, but you know, some historical production there, I'd call it Brownsfield-ish. You know, sometimes there's environmental concerns, you know, going into these old places, what you're going to find. But small scale historical work, that's probably not a big issue. And in this area, it's pretty remote, right? So that doesn't seem like a deal killer to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think with permitting in California, like what I like to think is you know, it was really in 2002 when they had a backfill requirement that they put in place.
Yeah.
That there was the perception that California was anti-mining. You know, I think what the idea was is that, you know, they were the first to put this backfill requirement in. You know, it's really something that's done worldwide now. So like, you know, they were the first to do it, but now everyone does it. It's really an even playing field in my view. And the more I educated myself on California and the permitting process, you realize it's really no different than anywhere else.
Yeah, that's cool.
You know, if you listen to Ross Beatty, the chairman of Equinox Gold, I mean, he's going to be, you know, right now he's doing around 130,000 ounces a year out of California of gold. In 2 years' time, when he has the second project, his Castle project up and running, he's going to be doing something around 300 to 350,000 ounces a year in California. And if you listen to him, you know, he's beating the drum for California, and not that he doesn't say it's easy to operate in, but he says it's no different than anywhere else. And once you get up and running, it's actually a very stable jurisdiction and a great place to operate, especially with the strong land tenure. You know, nothing can change on you in terms of fiscal terms.
Yeah.
Ownership. You know, even on our ground here, like you said, we have patented and unpatented grounds. We own mineral rights. You know, we own subsurface rights. You know, these are things that you can't take away.
And if you're doing an underground operation, right, you may be able to fit 5 years, 10 years, 20 years of mine life on your patented postage stamp too, which would be the street would be, that's a subtle detail that not everybody might get right away if they're just comparing resource tables of this project and this project. But permittability, very important.
And like you said, underground operations, you know, the one benefit for us will be on the permitting side. It's just you know, with a smaller surface footprint on the underground operations, it does make permitting one step easier.
This looks like a pretty fascinating area. Just looking up to the forward in this view, you know, it looks like there's a pretty steep decline there from pretty big topographical feature. I don't know what the valleys are, what's all going on around here, but you know, looking up there and then looking off to the right side and thinking about, you know, being up on this hillside and the vertical orientation of the ore body, and you know, the different ways that you can access it, right? If you're trying to ramp in from a lower elevation, you know, versus come in at it from the top of the ridge, right? There's little things like that this project, yeah, it seems like it's a good setup. You know, it looks like it could be a mine there.
Well, it was a mine, and
exactly.
You know, we plan to make it a much bigger mine coming up here in the future.
Well done. Yeah, thank you. And there's another video too that has some. I think this one has some field footage or some of the pictures, I guess, that we've been looking at. But this is from 2018 already. Wow, how time flies, hey?
Yeah, I think this really is, you know, just showing kind of, you know, where the project is in terms of where it is in North America, where it is in California.
Yep.
And it, you know, kind of looks at the underground, you know, some of the you know, the drill holes, kind of the shape of the deposit.
Oh boy. Seriously.
So there's where you can see you know, it's a vertical deposit. What's been defined right now, they're lenses that are near vertical. You know, like I said, the big opportunity to increase the size quickly would be at depth. You know, there's a couple of holes that are at depth that show great mineralization. You know, just take a investment by us. And like I said, Bleeding had the same view. They were going to build a shaft and then just keep drilling it off at depth.
Yeah. Well, and trying to
technology, you know, we don't need the shaft. We'll drill from surface. And
you know, I'm looking at the grades here and where the purple bars, you know, are in these views, right? And just thinking about capping and just wondering, you know, like the resource estimates there, that's probably going to put a 8%, 10%, 12% zinc cap, you know, on the numbers there. So if you have these 25%, 30% hits, how do you get them to be included in the resource, or, you know, treated as 15% as opposed to 11 or 10 or something, you know, trying to capture and understand the high grade as much as you can. And it's funny, right? You look over here and like, boom, purple, kind of all on its own. And it's like, okay, big questions about that, right? When you see isolated high grade at the bottom of several old holes, I'll say, right over here, the bottom right is where I'm looking there. You know, that's just screaming for more work.
Yeah. No, there's certain areas there where for sure the ended in mineralization, and you know, looks like there's extensions of some of the zones, and that's obviously where we want to focus in on our follow-up. You know, Jack has spent a lot of time, as well as some of his technical partners, and you know, they've identified you know, lots of targets. You know, confirmatory ones, but also some expansion opportunities and reconfirmation opportunities.
VMS districts, you know, they can be very, very large, like laterally, right? And lots of targets that you could hunt. So it's where do you go first? What's the priority, right? And it's got to be the high grade, you know, the high margin stuff where you can find it.
For sure. I mean, I'm a CPA by background, so you know, when I look at these things, I mean, I look at it more from, you know, the dollars and cents on what you can do, and obviously, the higher the grade, the larger the profit margin. You know, so you know, when we started hitting some of that high grade last year in 2018, 2019, we started seeing some of these high grade sections of the deposit. Obviously, you know, that is substantial grade and goes a long way to economics.
Well, and you mentioned the World War II era production, right? And the blast at surface, they were pitting it and they were getting 12% or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, it was like 12, 13% zinc right from surface.
Right. So can we go put a drill hole in that here, Patrick?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it. Some of it would be oxidized by now, but everything we've been drilling is sulfide. It's easier to mine the sulfides, but for sure, we've contemplated just going in underneath where they left off back in World War II.
And were they mining?
That was Hecla that produced in World War II.
Yeah,
they're still around and still an operating company. They're the ones that operated it in World War II.
Were they getting fresh sulfides at surface there, or were they mining oxide with that?
No, I believe they were doing sulfides, and then they were feeding it to a local mill. It was a mill that was doing another operation, so they were trucking it not too far. I think it was within 10 or 20 miles.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Well, so it may have oxidized around the area where they were poking around, blasting and stuff, but along strike or other similar pods that haven't been, if they were getting, high grade sulfides at surface, near surface, that would probably be a big surprise to the market, right? If you hit 10 meters of 12% or something like that from 5 meter depth or 10 meter depth or something like that, that would be a big hole.
Well, that would be the exciting thing if we can find more vertical lenses that are starting from surface, right? Yeah. Like they did. Then all of a sudden, it's not 8 million tons. It's a multiple of 8 million tons. So that's
well, and even with some of those
high impact exploration, it would be a game changer overnight.
Well, and those things sometimes they don't add a lot to tonnage, but they add a lot to profits.
Mm-hmm. And there is holes. There is like if you look at our presentation, there was one hole that was off the deposit that
beautiful
right at surface had really good grade, and that's something we want to follow up on.
Where do you have a?
It's a long section that we have in here.
Okay.
Stop. Okay. Yeah. So if you look on the left-hand side up near the top there, you can see 6.5 meters of almost 7% zinc, almost right on surface.
Nice. Yep.
And you can see that 2,400 foot gap. Something is going on there.
Yeah.
That zinc didn't get up there, by itself. So, there is a some geological interpretation of what is going on there. Is it a separate lens? Is it, so it's something that we've got to explore.
Well, and what's in between those two areas too, right, Patrick? Is
exactly.
I don't know what it was. Was that a gold mine or what the American Eagle? Do you know what they were mining there? Was that the World War II production?
That's a small shaft. I think that was a gold. I was actually in that one. We believe that was probably more likely because this, like I mentioned earlier, this is the area that this is the gold rush area. So that's right at surface. It looked like someone was chasing probably a gold vein. Well,
and that's the other thing too, right? Is when projects get worked to the degree that this one has, we always want to impose a sense of understanding. We want to have a sense that we know what's going on at depth and even the genetic model, right, for the deposit, where to come from, how to get here. But when you're in a prolific area like this, you can have different things getting pushed up against each other for whatever reason. All of a sudden, there's an orogenic gold system, part of an orogenic gold deposit, chopped off and smashed up next to this VMS thing. So there could be, surprising stories about unexpected deposit types that are kind of hiding in this land package. And then, there's other surprises that could be at play too, right? Because some of these VMS can be gold rich.
For sure. I mean, that's when we drilled the last few holes. I mean, we were pleasantly surprised at the precious metal hits. Like I mentioned, 5 grams per ton over 5 feet on multiple locations. I mean, that's discovery holes for other people. That's, it's a byproduct for us. But when you're getting 5 grams per ton over 5 feet, it's very significant. So, like you said, we got lots of pleasant surprises on the additional precious metal hits. Also point out on this map, so if you look at the very bottom there, that big circle with the yellow on the bottom, that's what we're talking about. That's the opportunity at depth. You can see there's 2 holes drilled there that had great mineralization. Very far apart, nothing in between. So what's going on there? Does that come down and then just balloon out, or is there additional lenses there. Maybe one lens is attached to that hole near surface. That's where we're really not sure what's going on there. But there's a lot of mineralization. We haven't connected the dots.
Geophysics, right? 600, 700 meters, 2,000 feet. You can see down that far, whether controlled source or some of the passive geophysical techniques, right? Yeah. Is there any talk of any of that stuff? Any, deep, heavy duty IP stuff or any of the magnetotelluric geophysical stuff?
I know several programs have been undertaken on the field. The technical crew, they feel that they have a lot of the data already. They've kicked around a possible another geophysical program.
Yep.
I think the next round, we're comfortable doing some more drilling, but we may add in some geophysics as well.
Well, the downhole geophysics, I've heard from people that it's kind of unfair when you're using it in some of the VMS systems, because it gives you basically, electromagnetic response downhole. So, if you had a hit, you were in grade, you can get a pretty sharp reading on, the boundaries of that. And if you didn't hit the grade that you thought you did, you'll get a sense, were you 5 feet away or is there no response there at all nearby? To have that really targeted geophysical response from a particular depth corresponding to where you are downhole, in situations like this, where you start to have a lot of information already from prior drilling, really powerful stuff. Seismic's another one. If you can connect up seismic and geological maps, and then layer in, either IP or magnetotelluric stuff, you can get some real deep, 1,000 meter modeling of what's going on, just basic lithology, right, on 1,000 meter kind of depths, with pretty high confidence. Some of the seismic on that's you got to do a big bang to get those readings. It's maybe prohibitive, but no, where you guys are, you got a lot of room to play. You could do a lot of different things and get all kinds of information about this, let alone all the surface work too, the geochem you can do. But it's a question of what does the market want to see, or what would a partner, who's going to come in and buy this, what would they want to see as right?
For sure. I mean, and I think what makes sense is for sure to look at those, like you said, the technology that can assist on identifying that. I think the big picture is we have to make this bigger and better. So larger tonnage, higher grade, just improves economics. Pretty soon we're going to want to start moving this to, we want to expand it, and then we want to start moving into engineering, permitting, and advancing it. This is it's a development and exploration project. So we want to start advancing it and getting the value out of the project.
How's the street response been so far?
It's I think the biggest question we get is really California. And like I said at the beginning of this, I had to educate myself. I'm the largest shareholder of this company. I became a shareholder through buying in the market initially, just as a passive investor. Wow. And I just kept buying because I really liked it. And before I came on as CEO and took the large blocks on the open market, I did educate myself on the permitting process in California. Yeah. And I don't think any permitting process anywhere in the world is easy, but I think there's a clear pathway here. I think what's key on it is that in California, the local county can be the lead agency. So they will be the primary one responsible for issuing the conditional use permit. And our county that we're in, Mariposa, are quite clear that they would maintain that. They would want to be the lead agency. So at least we're dealing with a group that is familiar with mining. They are familiar with mining because there's active mines in the area. They've been open to investment. They want it to be done responsibly. But I'd rather be dealing with the local county that it's going to impact them directly than dealing with someone in a federal office, 2,000 or 3,000 miles away. So I think the way that they've set it up is a great opportunity for Blue Moon. You're going to be dealing with the people that are going to be directly impacted in terms of jobs, in terms of revenue.
Well, yeah, it's amazing, that subtle detail, right? The fact that the local county can be the lead agency, right? It really makes it so that some places in California are just complete no-go. There's no, right? Not going to happen. And then other places it's open for business. And for people who don't understand the subtleties of that, they're just going to dismiss it out of hand every time, and they'll miss it. Yeah.
I totally agree. I mean, there's definitely lots of counties there that have active mining operations. California is like the 5th largest economy in the world.
Yeah.
It's a huge economy. It is, large amount of resource development. It's one of the largest in oil and gas development.
Yeah, the history
aggregate. There's a lot of industrial operations in California.
And in the agriculture, the farmers too. Controversial maybe, but really important, and a really good example of how much natural resource industries are job creators, right? That's farming really hits that one home. Mining's the same way.
I agree. So in the agriculture belt, I mean, we're outside of that belt. Like, even if you look at that map that you're looking at right now, you look at Merced, Modesto, and Stockton. I mean, they're all in the agriculture belt. Once you start getting up into the area where Blue Moon is, as you saw on the map, there's no agriculture there. It's just, there's no irrigation. It's not. So we're out of the agricultural belt.
Nice to be up on those hills. That's where you want to be. And is this the 2018, 2019 you mentioned? Yeah.
Yeah, so this is the last 3 holes that have been drilled on the property. I mean, there's substantial holes. If you look at hole 78, the first one, you can see that 30 feet, 30% zinc.
Yep.
You can see that, almost 2% copper, almost 2 grams per ton gold, and 70 grams per ton silver for zinc equivalent of almost 37%. And then, under that is just the broader, 121 foot of almost 10% zinc. I mean, that's a very large intersection, and you can see the substantial copper and gold. And then the 2 holes, 79.
That was broader. That was the containing. That's the higher grade. Yep.
Yeah. So that's the higher grade within that broader 121 foot.
And can I just ask, where was that one in comparison?
I think it's you can see it. Yeah, to the left there. Yeah.
Yep.
So it's kind of in the middle. And so what we did is, so that's the initial hole, and then 70, 79, and 80, one went above it, one went below, because you're talking about a 200-foot area where there wasn't any data from. So with that hole, we wanted to see what's the extent of this high-grade hit that we had on it. And so you can see, you can be pleasantly surprised with even though you've got this large deposit, within it, there's some very high-grade material.
It's often that way. People will drill off a deposit, and then they'll have one more hole that they're supposed to drill for some geotech thing, or because they hadn't ever drilled this one orientation before, and then they drill it, and it turns out to be the best hole that the deposit's ever yielded. And investors were out here scratching our head, like, could you have drilled that one earlier, you guys? Like, sorry, not to tell you, like, I'm sure, what's going on. Or is it a sign that the project's better, and it continues to get better the more you work it too?
Well, I mean, we were pleasantly surprised. It was not twinning another hole or anything like that. I mean, we just hit 78, and we got the results. We had to, I think we got a triple check at the lab, because it's higher than the other holes that we've had in that area. So, we want to just be sure that was right, because it was such high grade.
And so 78 was collared at the same pad as 79 and 80 over here?
Yes.
And then the intersection that 78, is there a red line, or where was that 78, that 120 feet?
It's roughly right in the middle of between 79 and 80. So those highlight, because this is the last program we did.
Yep.
So 79 and 80 was drilled in late 2019. So 10 months ago. It's roughly in between those.
Yep.
Because that was the idea. We wanted to see to the extent of this high grade and above and below hole 78. So,
Just
if you look back at the
thinking
results,
about
we're very happy that they both came back, well above deposit grade, showing that this high grade system in the middle is, well above deposit grade and continues to get larger.
And that's, I guess it reminds me too that I didn't have a sense of width of these intercepts too, right? But I'm trying to guess at what 120 feet of 10% might look like around here. And, if each of these holes, if some of these holes are 2,000 foot holes, right, then, it's something like one of these purple intervals. And it's not like an unusually long intercept, 120 feet.
No, I don't think so. But now that does predate the drilling. So
That's right. Yeah. So the holes we're talking about are not in this view.
That's correct.
Which is the fun part then, to be like, oh, does that mean that there's a big purple bar right here that we didn't know about, right smack dab in the middle? It's like, what do we do now with that information?
Yeah. So we'll have three really nice colors in there. Some nice purplish, pinkish colors.
Adding to the metal, the metal inventory, really, in a major way too, and quickly. That's a big hole. Yeah. So was this when you drilled this? I wasn't following. I wasn't aware, but I would guess this definitely turned some people's attention towards you, eh?
Yeah, for sure. I would say that where we got the attention was probably more from industry.
Yeah.
So some industry players noticed it more than I would say retail investors. We did this during kind of the downturn of investor interest in the mining industry. So we were able to get this done at a slow period. But for sure, industry noticed it, and we got several comments from parties that are familiar with, what Blue Moon is doing and the significance of these results.
Base metals are hard. There's a lot of the junior mining investors, they just want to do gold and maybe silver. But even silver, some of the metallurgy and stuff like that seems to be beyond them. Sometimes gold's pretty simple a lot of the time. And base metals seems to just get abandoned a lot in Vancouver from that really speculative part of the audience. But that changes too when the price picks up though. And then, because there's real projects, there's real explorationists, professional exploration people who are, involved in the junior mining business, giving us a good name here by having real discoveries. we need it.
And I think people sometimes forget, like zinc is like the fourth most widely used metal in the world. So it's not like it's an obscure metal. But I agree that there's less people that would be familiar with zinc compared to the gold and silver.
Well, and that's Canada too. Go to Australia, and it's right, different story. A lot more sophisticated base metals audience there for copper, I find, as well, and lots of different things. I wonder, any interest from any players in the exploration, junior side of things from abroad, Australia or the UK or anywhere else really in the world?
Yeah, so after hole 78, which was a fantastic hole, that's where we got interest from an Australian company to do a joint venture. And we did a deal with them, and that's what's listed there in front of you, is that they have to spend upwards of $11 million to earn a 70% interest.
Yeah.
And this company is the one that drilled hole number 79 and 80 in late 2019.
Oh, great. So you drilled 78, and that was enough to get them writing checks for the next two holes.
Yeah, so they drilled the next two holes. Now, they are to complete the stage one earn-in by February of 2021. So it's like 3 or 4 months left.
Okay.
But they are not going to be able to meet the minimum requirement, which is to drilling 10,000 meters. They've done, like as it says, they've completed about 1,100 meters. So, they've only done about 10% of the work program. And so that the project is going to come back to us after, we get the benefit of 2 more solid holes well above deposit grade, and we're going to get the project back 100% in a couple months here.
Wow. And they funded you $300K in a placement at a premium to market.
Yep.
And did you get cash or stock for the $250,000?
We got cash. So they invested
Nice.
$3 million in cash at 5 cents for us, and then they completed that 1,100 meters. That was their work commitment. That was their expenditure. They drilled those 2 holes and completed.
But they're not going to get to their 50%, so they're going to lose their position entirely.
Yeah.
You're not going to revise the terms and give them more time, or
well, what they've relayed to us is that their shareholder base wants to focus in on precious metals in Australia.
Yeah,
so,
sure. Yeah.
It's part of the what happened with COVID. The good and the bad is precious metals have done well, and so base metals for us. But as a result of them, in their situation, what they've issued in press releases that they want to focus on precious metals in Australia, and focus on gold projects in Australia.
Tough decision for them to do, but probably the right one. And they're cutting bait without losing too much. If they drilled 6,000 meters or 8,000 meters, right, it would be maybe a harder decision for them. But pretty beneficial to you guys. May have tied up the project for a while and eaten up some of your time. But here you are now, right? And would you rather be getting the project back, now, or in February, or next year, or February this year, right?
Well, I mean, yeah, it's always good to get the project back, but it's really, you're calling it 3 months. It's really not much difference. We don't mind waiting.
Well, when did they strike this deal though? Because this was 2018 or 20.
It would have been in 2019, so they had 18 months to complete it. So that 18 months is due in Q1.
Okay, yeah. So 18 months.
So they obviously did some work. They liked the project. I believe they'd want to continue. It's just that the market dictates them work on some of their other projects. So we're happy with the 2 holes that they drilled, and we're happy to get it back 100%.
Well, and 18 months and other projects, what were you guys doing during that time?
Well, during that time, it was a little tough to raise capital. So that's the reason why we did it. We did it so that we can continue to advance the project, yet not dilute Blue Moon shareholders.
Smart.
And like I mentioned, officers and directors, we own 20% of the company. So, we didn't want to dilute ourselves if we had a JV partner that was willing to go in and do the work and expend the funds on the project.
So it's been kind of a quiet mode there.
It's been very quiet, so like, Blue Moon did go quiet for a period of time, while the market was not receptive to doing any work. And so really, we haven't done any IR work. We haven't been out there telling our story. It's just starting to now, with the commodity prices coming back, with us getting 100% of the asset back just around the corner, it makes sense for us to start letting the world know again, hey, don't forget Blue Moon, and here's the potential, and here's what we're going to do.
I see officers and directors with 20%. Is there a group beyond that or around that takes you up to kind of a majority position in this case?
Yeah, we know roughly where kind of 50-60% of the stock is. It is in what I would say largely high net worth retail hands.
Yeah.
But it is, we can count out on, who owns roughly 50% of the company.
And they know what they're doing in terms of investing in a zinc exploration company. They have some idea of, the ongoing funding requirements and all the different stuff that comes along with it, I'm sure. Yeah,
and I mean, some people are in there because of the zinc. I'm sure some people are in there for precious metals.
Yeah.
We're starting out with a substantial resource, so we're not starting out from scratch on an exploration asset. We're starting out with a very good resource base, and we're gonna, we want to make it bigger and advance it.
Well, and I'm thinking about the stuff in the north here that you have in Nunavut, right? And gold again, greenstone belt.
Yeah, and this is another Boliden asset. So this is the
Wow.
This was another asset from that time when Boliden owned Java. They owned Blue Moon. So these two assets are inherited from that era. It's a really interesting project. As it mentions here, we own one side of the Greenstone Belt. Glencore owns the other side, which, they have the Hackett River deposit, which is just a massive deposit. It's like 80 million tons, in the billions of pounds of zinc, and I think it's around 400 million ounces of silver. So it's a very large project. It's underexplored on our side of the belt. We're just waiting to see what Glencore wants to do with it. That it is a little bit more expensive to drill there. It's a little bit more exploration, and that's why we're focusing on Blue Moon, because Blue Moon's more near term, more within the grasp of coming to development. But Java's a very big, large potential project. It's just in northern Canada, so requires a little bit more time and money to figure.
Well, and I wonder about doing some of the earlier stage prospecting type stuff. Just the basic geochem science, basic geophysics too, right? That it seems like the majors they do all that stuff just as a matter of routine on their projects, right? So if you can do some of that to cut some of the work down for them, or show them things that they might start getting excited about, right? Those can be pretty light spending programs for you, but potentially high impact, in terms of earning some credit from the major next door. Even if the market, doesn't care about, what people say, the market doesn't care about surface grabs and things like this. But if your if potential partner cares about it, then, is it good spending? It depends on a lot of things. Any plans to spend any money on Java here?
Yeah, we're certainly taking a very hard look at it, and we continue to be in periodic contact with Glencore and seeing what they're doing with it. It makes sense it's a very large project. It's probably one of the largest undeveloped projects. So it's going to be a catalyst at some point in time. So we prod them and try to keep informed on what they're looking to do. Because obviously, we have a vested interest in something coming together there.
Well, it's new things in old places is really what I'm thinking about too, right? Looking at these resource estimate from 1976 and predating NI 43-101. So, Glencore can do their own models of that. Thank you very much. If they have access to all the old drill data, right? So, there's all those questions. And what do you do?
This is an Xstrata asset. So, we believe that they have extensive data on it.
Yeah.
I'm sure they've done a internal pre-feasibility study.
Yeah.
I would say that it's at that level that they've run the numbers, and they're probably mulling over what they want to do with it.
Amazing to see a 300-foot, I guess it's a pit here with 1 million tons at almost 5% zinc and 1% copper from 1976 to depth of 300 feet. Okay. Yep.
Yeah, so
probably worth doing some more work on this one.
Holes in there. It's just how much money do you want to throw at it, and it's really going to be tied to what Glencore is going to do with their asset. So it's a really neat project.
And for you as a junior, it's what's going to get the market's attention to stimulate those conversations about the financings, these next rounds. Some juniors seem to have an attitude that our group can fund whatever work we need to do, but that's not really the normal situation here, generally. Where do you kind of fall in terms of looking for new shareholders versus, commitments from the existing block and group?
Yeah, I think it's important for us to get the word out there. People see that, what I think differentiates us, in my opinion, differentiates us from a lot of other juniors is that, we're starting from a development asset. Yeah. Now, it's a development asset with a lot of exploration potential. I myself have been an investor over the years. I think early in my career, I invested a lot in pure exploration projects, which,
Very difficult.
very difficult. It's, you're, I don't know if it's 90 or 95% chance that your investment's going to go to zero.
More, high
Yeah. And that's, me as a finance guy, I like, and this is what, the gentleman that a couple of guys I used to work with at Adriana, Rick Barkley, Mike Bealey, they really hammered into me that you really want a development stage asset. You want something with substance to start with and grow from there. And that's what I liked about this project is that, they believed and almost brought it to a production point. They were ready to do a sizable investment with a shaft. And the next step after that would be just to further defining the asset and getting it ready for production.
Well, Boliden's, they've got their feet under them now. I think I don't know if you've been talking to them, or if they have plans to come back to the USA, or if they have other.
Yeah, I don't know if they want to dip their toe back into North America, but they certainly continue to have success in Europe, and particularly Scandinavian countries,
and with lots of VMS systems, as I understand it, right?
Yeah. I mean, the only legacy NSR on this is a small NSR to Boliden, which is capped. It's a very minor one, but
nice.
That just shows you that when they exited, they kept a small piece of the project.
What's the cap like?
It's a 0.5% NSR and it's capped at, I believe, $500,000 US. So it's very minor in the overall scheme of things.
Yeah, I like that.
So it'd be. The most that will ever be paid out is $500,000.
Some of those royalties, they really hobble projects, and especially in places like this where you have the history of mining and who knows. You mentioned a small list of owners, right? That this has only had a couple owners, and that's good because in some of these areas, these old camps, these in California, right, can get pretty burdened with heavy royalty loads by this person who owned it, that person owned it, and it can just kill. It could be the difference between go and no go.
Well, I mean, that's when you say what we did the last 2 years, it did have other NSRs on it that had a 5% NPI, which is a net profit interest.
Wow.
We purchased that back in, I believe, 2019, maybe late 2018.
Okay.
And then during COVID, this period where, obviously the opportunity presented ourselves that, we did talk to some of the initial claim owners, who are well into their 80s, the guys that originally put this package together a long time ago, and they each had a 1% NSR. So we bought those back for modest amounts, and so that's where we cleaned up this thing so that there is only that 0.5% NSR to Boliden, which is capped at $500,000, which, as I mentioned, the overall scheme of things, it's virtually zero NSR on the project now. Which gives us a lot of flexibility going forward.
Yeah, that's time well spent. That's really taking that time when you had the JV partner doing the spending, whether when you had the JV partner there through 2019 to focus on tidying up that side of things. And sometimes those are expensive decisions to make a lump sum payment to somebody to settle a contingent claim that you're probably never going to have to pay a dime on. Why would you issue shares to do that? Well,
yeah, and as a junior company, I mean, if we were an exploration company, you'd never be buying back the NSR. But that's not what we view. We've got an asset here that's going to, ultimately is going to go into development.
Yeah.
So our view is let's clean up the NSRs. Let's get rid of them while the market is down and while there's an opportunity. So during a slow time in the industry, we took out the NSRs. We cleaned it up.
Well done. Yeah, well done. That helps put some things together for me there, and appreciate that explanation there and filling in the details. It's amazing how many twists and turns there are to these stories, right? And
there's always a story behind it.
Well, and it's those subtle details that kind of figure out or help investors figure out if the group they're with has any idea what's going on or something, right? Like it's those subtle things is where you start to see people make decisions or really make the right choice. And cleaning it up, absolutely the right choice, and hilarious to see to hear you say, you know, an exploration company would never do that, right? Not an exploration
you know
company.
what? Well, it's going to be going to an engineering stage here, you know, in the short order, and any kind of NSR or NPI is going to directly impact your net present value IRR. So, you know, you're going to see the benefit once those that we get at the engineering stage. All those elimination of all those are really going to add to the bottom line.
And so before you go into that, is there a plan, you know, to do another 10,000 meters of drilling, right? Or is it how trying to add tonnage down below, right? What's, you know, or do you focus on the higher grade stuff near surface, or the higher grade stuff that you hit in 78? Right? There's a few things you could do here.
For sure. I mean, I think you nailed it there. I mean, before we go to engineering, we do want to put some more holes into the ground. We want to see, you really want to see how big this can get. And maybe we'll start doing it in parallel at a certain point in time. But I think an initial 10,000 meters, like you mentioned, will give us the ability to get those extension opportunities. We've got some high impact exploration targets, like you mentioned. We really want to hit those hard, see what we have, and then start looking harder at the engineering side. You know, start looking at PEAs, pre-feasibilities.
Again, the views here project shows well, right?
Yep, that's a Google Map view of the project. You can kind of see the terrain a little bit. It is, and you can see that pit up on the left-hand side. That's where the legacy mining that Hecla did performed back in World War II.
So is there any thought of trying to go and chase stuff around there?
I think the only thing we do there is we may test a little bit towards what may be left near surface. Like we said earlier, we believe that it may be oxidized near surface just because it's been open for, call it 80 years. But we may test a little bit under it. Because obviously if you're looking, the legacy production was 13% zinc. If we can find some high grade near surface, obviously that adds tremendously to the economics. And just to point out, if you look up the left-hand side, there you can see the hydroelectric facility.
Oh, really? Up there? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Serious. Yeah.
And you can see the road there going right through the property. That's just a, well-traveled road.
Well, I wonder, I was wondering about road works and stuff like that. How much road building do you think you need to do?
Yeah, I mean, when we get to full-scale production, we would have to upgrade the roads there. There's just simple dirt roads. The highway is not very far from here. It'd be, down at the bottom of the map, a little bit further up. But with big tonnage trucks coming through, we'd want to upgrade the road.
Well, and for getting around for drilling, bringing the rig.
For drilling, it's been fine. Yeah, the drill rig has had no issue getting in and out.
Yeah, that's right. And the watershed with that, with this, is and the dam there. Is there any issues water wise? Being in
no, I mean you got to remember we're not doing an open pit here. It's all underground.
Yeah.
It would be dry stacked tailings.
Yeah.
It'd be using very little water. There's no. Be no chemicals in anything that we do that would cause any concern in our opinion. So we don't think it's a low impact surface operation.
Yeah. Neat. Thanks for pointing out that was that pit up there in the top left corner of the land package. I wonder. I hope that you've spent some money, working around there, right? Like it may be, you have to look below it, but maybe you look along strike too. Like I can't tell exactly what the orientation of where they were digging at, but there's a pretty prominent ridge, kind of heading, looks like north-south there, right?
Yeah, so that is the strike. So the strike would be kind of coming towards the bottom of the map. from that direction forward. And there's really been no holes as you go down towards the bottom. And very little work has been done. There's been soil and geophysics, but no drilling. And so that's where several of the targets are planned, is also along strike. There's a very high likelihood that there's additional mineralization along strike. Potentially another blue moon lens. There might be multiple lenses along here.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned, that's where you start talking multiples of blue moon, and it changes the dynamic of the project overnight.
Yeah, and because the length that we're talking about here is probably on the order, tens of, no, not quite tens of kilometers, half a kilometer bar, maybe 8 kilometers long, it looks like, in this view of the map that we're looking at here. From north to south.
I agree.
That's a significant area, right? And a couple kilometers wide. That's a lot of place. You can fit a lot of underground mining and VMS districts. Yeah, these things, if they trace out like that, and you can start following them. It's the hunting for the high grade part. That's the challenge. Yeah, good challenge to have. And I guess this is to look at the team again. I'm looking for the team here. So, and technical team, right? These guys continue to be involved for exploration side, or are these more development?
Yeah, so I would say the first gentleman, Mike Petrina, he's an underground mining engineer.
Okay.
So he would be at the development stage, and a lot of experience. He worked for Pan American, Mag Silver, extensive work on the underground side. The second gentleman, Larry O'Connor, Larry started up several mines, including, he restarted the Mesquite mine, which is that mine that I mentioned, Equinox or Ross Beatty. They're doing about 130,000 ounces. That's in California, in Southern California. So that's a heap leach operation, but extensive experience, getting a mine off the ground. Yeah. Larry is based in Reno, so he's a 4-hour drive, and he's walking on site, so he can get to site and back in the same day.
Important to have somebody close. Yeah, you got to have a local fixer, right? Whether you're in California or wherever you are in the world.
Yeah. He's very familiar with land rights, putting projects into production, dealing with locals, and dealing with government officials.
Well, and is there, and I guess Jack has some pretty good ideas here about exploration. So, I wonder to what degree he might be involved in kind of planning out exploration work.
Yeah. Jack's going to be hands-on. This is his baby, if you will. He'll be very hands-on in terms of selecting the drill holes. I mean, he's the one that selected 78. Our partner 79 and 80, but it was within consultation with Jack, and he's already got kind of the next 10 drill holes in his head, what he wants to do here. So it's his baby.
Well, and it all comes down to drilling, but with some of these projects too, like this, you got so much area, do you go and you put another 5 holes in an envelope that's already well defined and add some higher grade to it? Or do you go put a hole in something completely new? Or do you go do surface work, to try and start? This is potential for trenching, right? To really give you some useful information quickly, right? If they were able to pit that high grade 80 years ago, what can we trench today in terms of finding high grade? And can we follow that and start to put together, an at surface high grade, fresh sulfide domain, satellite deposit? You show 2 or 3 of those, 4 of those, all of a sudden the market, it starts looking at you differently, right? And
yeah, I mean, to put it in perspective, we met with a high level industry person at one of the mid tiers.
Yeah.
And he put it at, 1 drill hole away.
Yeah. Well, 78 was catalytic in terms of bringing a JV partner in, right? Mm-hmm. So, that's, there's a clear precedent for that. And something like that could happen again. Is that kind of the preferred route, to find another JV partner here again, or is it a little bit more trying to go under your own steam?
I think right now we want to go ahead on our own steam. I think it makes sense for us to continue drilling with these 3 great holes under our belt. We know what we want to accomplish in the next round of drilling.
Okay.
So we really want to lead that ourselves.
And are these next 3 holes in relation to 78, 79, 80?
Yeah, I mean, what we ultimately want to do is probably do more like 5 to 10 holes.
Yep.
It'll probably be a combination. And it's like you mentioned earlier, we'll probably want to put some holes in and around that high grade area. Just keep seeing how big it can get. And we also want to test that hole that's off by itself that had 7% zinc and it was just off by itself. We really want to see, is that gap of 2,400 feet of, what's there. I think it makes a lot of sense to go back in and test it, especially if we can do some work near surface. It's a little less expensive.
Yeah.
And, the real opportunity too is at depth. If we can get some holes down there and get some good holes, then all of a sudden we can turn that into an inferred resource at depth, and that will add tonnage, a lot of tonnage very quickly. And then you're just adding, extended years of mine life to the project, which is what the bigger players want to see. They want to see long life assets. So here's our opportunity to show them that. It's a little bit more expensive drilling at depth, but so that's the trade-off, but it's very interesting. We could potentially, make this much larger at depth.
And so what did you pay for this project?
Well, it was always in the company. So this was, as I mentioned, so the history was, it was a former vice president bought the assets of Bleed in North America, call it. He put them in there, and one by one, he's developed the primary asset. And this and Yava. So Blue Moon and Yava were kind of on projects 3 and 4. So he sold the first project, and the Chinese bought it. Second project was the Koreans bought it. And then he kept spinning out the remaining assets. So that's what this company was. It was a spin out, and it held Blue Moon and Yava. And then, they did some exploration work, and these projects stayed in the background. So that's the history here is, this has been in the same ownership group for decades. And that's why, this company never paid anything for this or Yava. It's always been there. That's why when I got involved, I had to buy my shares in the open market.
Yes.
There was not, that's the only way to get control of it, is I had to become the largest shareholder of it.
And there was no financings. They weren't doing financings that were going to let you get that position?
No, I had to buy my position in the market. And once I got up to, call it almost 10%, I called the meeting and took over the management of the company.
Wow. The junior mining business is, it's a great place for activist investors, really.
Yeah, it's all great when prices do well. So, that's what we're looking at here. It looks like we're in a perfect storm of precious metals. Looks like it's got a good future ahead of us. And then, with zinc and copper, with, all the promises of infrastructure spend and a lot of the alternative uses for zinc, it's a primary with steel production. So that's where the infrastructure link is there's gonna be a lot of steel gonna be coming out of it. That's the primary use of zinc. There's also all sorts of alternatives with it in terms of, they're talking a lot about, clean air batteries, primarily using zinc. So there's a lot of things that are coming down the pipe, and, there's always calls for the supply demand fundamentals are out of whack, and mines coming off stream, possibly Chinese. They keep talking about a lot of the Chinese operations that are coming off stream because of environmental reasons, or they're just they're just getting lower and lower grade to the point where it's non-economic. So the long-term fundamentals for zinc look good, coupled with the high precious metal market. It looks really good for a project like Blue Moon.
And so the projects that this company had before that they sold, was there ever any special distribution dividend? Or was that just a big war chest?
Yeah, so what they did is, I mean, I'm not an expert on the history, but I can kind of give you a brief history. Yeah, I think it's been a spin out of a spin out. So like, I know the last company
Yeah.
that had the Selwyn deposit. It was Selwyn was the name of the company, and they're focusing on the large Selwyn project up in northern Canada. And I think it was Korean Zinc that ultimately got it, and that company then spun out these assets into this company with the idea that these are the non-core assets and they wanted to be more of a standalone Selwyn asset. And so I think if you're a shareholder of Selwyn, you became a shareholder of Blue Moon or its predecessor name.
And maybe got a cash distribution too when that company sold itself or sold the project.
I think they did. I think, yeah, the Korean Zinc did buy it. They did do a cash distribution, and that company went on to do something else. But that's where Blue Moon came about. It was a spin out of a company that was focusing on one of the other projects, one of the other zinc projects.
So you were, and it's a founder. You're a founder of Adriana here.
Yeah, I mean, I helped restructure it, and way back when, and I met Rick Barkley, Mike Bealey, and they came in and led it. So I mean, really, I was one of the initial shareholders of it, and I really was able to ride their tailcoats, if you will.
Yeah. So, any other things that you're doing in the junior mining business, or this is it? This is the focus.
This is the prime. I mean, I have a large investment in this, personal investment in this.
Yeah.
So I like the project, obviously, and I put my money where my mouth is. So this is my primary focus.
Yeah.
And with us getting the project back 100%, with these 3 great holes, it makes sense that this is the time for Blue Moon.
And shares out, corporate side.
Yeah, it's around 120 million.
Yep.
When I took over the company, it was around 70 million. So we've issued a few shares and cleaning up the NSRs and doing some financings to, get the drill permits in place, go out and do drilling. We've kept a very lean operation. Jack and I are the primary ones that are involved in, whether operationally or technically.
And you kept the warrant count down, and the warrants, they kept the warrant count down, way down.
Yeah, there's only one set of warrants out there,
yeah.
So that's it.
What kind of share price?
The warrants are at 7 cents.
Yeah. Are they in the money? Where's the stock?
Stock is around 4.5, 5 cents.
Nice. Upside.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, our market cap is very small. It's you can see we have a lot of room to grow.
Well, that $5 million, there seems to be something about $5 million as a market cap that just seems to attract. I don't know if it's a sink or why it is that a lot of companies seem to end up around there, right? It's kind of small. It's small. There's a lot of upside from there. It's small enough that any meaningful, discovery intercepts, like meaningful exploration success, and a big impact. But it's not so small that $1 million financing, it's only 20%, dilution, really, right? So it's kind of just on that point where it's like, it discourages you from doing much financing, but you can do a bit around that $5 million market cap. Yeah, I've seen a lot of juniors kind of huddling around there. I don't know why, but.
And obviously, we want to break out of that mold. We think that even the Blue Moon deposit as it is should garner a much larger valuation than 5. But,
well, and to that, maybe one question for you: the Shareholders Gold Council, a group of kind of institutional players, right? They publish a letter giving advice or just saying their opinions on various things. And one of the things that they talk about is like making it easier for people to get into data rooms on projects. And, for exploration stories, it's kind of whatever, not a lot of information to talk about. But something like this, where there is so much historic information, like making all of those old databases, making the leapfrog models publicly available might help, catch the eye of some of those people who are off studying these things on their own, and really giving them the data to play geologist. There are some real bullish geologists out there who are studying this stuff themselves, and there's a whole bunch of self-taught people and things like that too. So
Okay.
yeah, just to mention that to you, that if there's any way to make more of the data public, there's an audience for it, right? And I think it'll it helps distinguish you a bit, and just because you're doing it right, it's transparent. It's that transparency, I think, is important, but it also is it's a pretty clear marker to whoever looks that there's been significant money spent on this project, and you can say that money was for naught, or you can study the results of the data and come up with a more informed opinion. And the more you can do to kind of make all that stuff available, I think the better.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea. It's an interesting concept. I think there's been some success on it, right? Some people have done well on it.
I think the Gold Corp Challenge or something like that, is one of the, the Integra Challenge, or whoever is going to do it next, right? It's kind of a repeatable thing. And, you don't have to make such a big deal of it either. You can just have a place on the website that's like, access to the cloud, and here's all the data. There's a whole bunch of people that aren't going to really be able to use that data in any way. But then there's other people who are, and, with all the disruptions to normal routines, right? These people are communicating online in all kinds of new ways. So the more you can kind of interject or insert yourself into those conversations, the better.
Sure. Yeah. Like you said, there's several people that have made careers out of capitalizing on that.
Amazing stuff, right? Well, and these interviews too that I get to do with executives, really amazing opportunity for me to talk to some high achievers and really dedicated people here. Of all the people I've talked to, Patrick, I don't think I could say anyone that I remember bought their way into on the market an executive position there. I really respect that a lot. The activist investor playbook, the vision that you saw, the potential you saw in the company, and then making that work in the market and then in the board. Very, very impressive. So kudos to you for that.
Well, thanks, but we still haven't gotten there yet. We still got some heavy lifting to do. So.
Yeah, afraid so. That's right with oil. You drill oil and your problems are over. You drill zinc and your problems are just beginning.
Yeah.
But to get this thing back 100%, I think is kind of puts a new spin on the company, right?
I totally agree. I mean, we're happy for them to continue on if they met their obligation, but obviously, their shareholders want to focus on something else, and we think it's a good time to get the asset back and move it forward ourselves. The price of the commodities, I think, are going to do very well in the next 5 to 10 years. So I think we're in the right place.
Well, I think the USA has a lot of potential to be leading on quality in mining. There's always going to be a lot of demand for cheap stuff, but there's been some issues. Low quality steel, right, has been a very controversial thing for a while now, with people all over the world getting screwed around by steel that's not what it should have been, and those are big problems, right? So trying to have a bit more visibility on that production chain and accountability. It's the same issue people talking about with cobalt and all these. There's a theme there, and being in the USA, being in a mine-friendly place in California, it's a good place to be.
I agree. We're looking forward to the next stage of development here.
Well, thank you. Nice to meet you. Look forward to hearing about it and, keeping up to date on what happens.
Thank you very much for having me, Peter. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Patrick.